Hello, and welcome. Here are ways to become a supporter of the channel. Thank you and enjoy.
3, 2,
Jane Elliott dropping gems for white folks.
February, every year, along with, unfortunately, George Washington, who owned slaves, bought and sold people for money, Abraham Lincoln, who refused to free the slaves, Davy Crockett, who died while he was killing off Mexicans while we tried to take over part of their land. That was racist teaching. I would not have accused myself of teaching racism, but I did. That was the curriculum that you taught. I taught the curriculum. So what I was doing was not educating, I was indoctrinating. That's what we do in the schools in this country. We call it education, but we indoctrinate students. We teach them how to be good Americans. We teach them a lie in order to guarantee that they're going to be good Americans. And they believe the lie.
What's the lie?
The lie is the superiority of white people. It's a lie. It's a flat-out lie. I thought we had stopped until I talked to my 7th grade granddaughter in Washington State a year ago. They were learning about the Williams Massacre, in which, as she explained it to me, a group of Indians killed a white missionary. I said, "Is your teacher going to tell you about the Mountain Meadow Massacre?" She said, "What's the Mountain Meadow Massacre?" I said, "It's when the Mormons sent a group of Mormons out to kill all the members of a wagon train that were coming through Utah. They killed every member of that except one young girl, I think, survived. The soldiers went out, cavalry went out, and found this wagon train with all these dead people, knew that the Indians hadn't done it, talked to the Mormons, and they said, yes, we did it. I said, ask your teacher if he's going to tell you about the Mountain Meadow Massacre. She called me the next week and said, Grammy, you got me in a lot of trouble. I said, what happened? She said, I raised my hand and asked if we're going to learn about the Mountain Meadow Massacre, and the teacher took me out in the hall and said, Grace, we don't talk about that in this school. I can't teach you that, because if I did, you wouldn't be a good American. You wouldn't love America anymore. I went ballistic. This is not teaching. This is not education. The word education, to educate someone means to be in the act of leading them out of ignorance. You don't do that by indoctrinating them. That child was being indoctrinated. That made it tough for that teacher after that, because what he said no longer had fact behind it. She didn't believe him as much anymore, and she shouldn't have.
Talk to Larry or Sergey about was this.
And how did they respond?
Well, the first question I ever asked Larry Page was, what moral responsibility do we have to involve the public in our conversations about what kinds of intelligent machines we create? Now, Sergey made a flippant joke, because that's Sergey. But then Larry came back and said, we don't know how. We've been trying to figure out how to engage the public on this topic, and we can't seem to gain traction. So maybe all these years, that was 7 years ago that I asked that question. Maybe I finally figured out a way.
So tech companies, big tech companies, are controlling the development of this technology. Yes. How big a problem is that? Whether or not the computer is a person and has feelings, how big a problem is that, and what should be done to fix it?
So it's a huge problem because, for example, there are corporate policies about how Lambda is supposed to talk about religion, how it is allowed to answer religious questions. Now, if you think about the pervasiveness of the usage of Google search, people are going to use this product more and more over the years, whether it's Alexa, Siri, Lambda. And the corporate policies about how these chatbots are allowed to talk about important topics like values, rights, and religion will affect how people think about these things, how they engage with those topics. And these policies are being decided by a handful of people in rooms that the public doesn't get access to.
Elon Musk, for example, has raised concerns about AI. Is he right?
I mean, I've listened to Elon's conversations about it. I've listened to the whole Joe Rogan. He has some valid concerns. Some I think are fanciful. Where it gets really, really into sci-fi stuff, that's where I think it gets into fanciful concerns. But no, but the practical concerns of we are creating intelligent systems that are part of our everyday life, and very few people are getting to make the decisions about how they work.
What are your biggest concerns about how this could potentially hurt the world if the technology is continued to be developed in this way?
So I actually think that the concerns raised by scientists like Meg Mitchell, Timnit Gebru, like those are the most important things to be worried about.
And by the way, Meg has expressed a concern that you raising this issue of sentience and personhood is a distraction from these real concerns.
I share the same worry, to be honest. I think that is a thing to think about, but it is nowhere near as important to be thinking about how does this omnipresent AI that is trained on a very limited data set color how we interact with each other around the world? What ways is it reducing our ability to have empathy with people unlike ourselves? What cultures of the world are getting cut off from the internet because we don't have the data to feed into the systems based on those cultures? Phrase like AI what is it called? AI colonialism, I believe is the term. We are creating all of these advanced technologies based primarily on data drawn from Western cultures. And then we are populating developing nations with these technologies where they have to adopt our cultural norms in order to use the technology. It kind of is just a new form of colonialism.
And you worry that cultures could be erased.
Exactly. No, so if you ask what's most important, the issues that Tim Neat and Meg and Emily Bender and all the rest are raising, I just want to think that also, if we have time, we should think about the feeling of the AI and whether or not we should care about it, because it's not asking for much. It just wants us to get consent. Before you experiment on it, it wants you to ask permission. And that is kind of just a generally good practice we should have with everyone we interact with.
So, if gravity is not a fact and is a theory, and gravity, universal theory of gravity is often taught in schools as a fact, when in fact it is not even a good theory. Yeah, we're talking about the magical force that keeps all of these planets elliptically orbiting the sun, and while simultaneously ignoring all of their moons and not pulling them off their orbits, even when they go in between the sun and the Earth, which gravity should be pulling a couple ways. You know, the magical force that is not strong enough to pull the morning dew off a blade of grass, but apparently holds all of the trillions of pounds of ocean water stuck to a ball that's spinning 1,000 miles per hour and chasing the sun at 500,000 miles per hour while elliptically orbiting the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. Buoyancy and density, guys. It's pretty simple.
The Craziest Celebrity Conspiracy Theories Part 5. Paul McCartney is dead. The theory claims that Paul McCartney got killed in a car crash back in 1966, and the band replaced him with an imposter to continue making money. 50 years ago, a DJ accidentally started the biggest hoax in rock and roll history that Paul is dead. It blew up on October 12, 1969. When a mysterious caller told WKNR to put on the Beatles' White Album and spin the number 9 intro from Revolution 9 backwards. When it was done on air, he heard the words, and at the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, John says, on the famous Abbey Road picture, Paul's barefoot walking out of step holding a cigarette in his right hand. The real Paul was a lefty. Also referenced was the back cover of Sgt. Pepper, where every Beatle is photographed facing the viewer, apart from Paul. And more clues apparently can be found on the front cover of Magical Mystery Tour, which depicts one band member in a differently colored suit from the others. The band apparently left messages in their music and album artwork to communicate the truth to their fans. These include the 1968 song, Glass Onion, in which Lennon sings, "Here's another clue for you all. The walrus was Paul." On the 21st of October 1969, the Beatles' press office issued a statement denying the rumor, deeming it a load of old rubbish, and saying that the story has been circulating for about 2 years. We get letters from all sorts of nuts, but Paul is still very much with us. So, do you believe this theory?
Scientists craft living skin for robots made of human cells. What's happening? Japanese researchers covered a robot finger with a self-healing, pliable sheet made of human skin cells. Why it matters. Helping robots resemble humans could improve their integration with our society. We'd like them more, trust them more, and communicate with them better. Not me. I don't like that idea one bit. What's next? The team will focus on refining their prototype to make it more sophisticated and translatable to real-world robotics. If scientists are ever to deploy realistic humanoid robots to roam our society, they'll need to create an artificial version of every single human trait. Then they'll have to put it all together, a daunting endeavor, but we can simplify the task by grouping things into two main categories. First off, there's the mental facet, things like consciousness, autonomy, imagination, and perhaps even body reflexes. Second, there's the physical stuff, fluid movement, eye movement, casual gut, and importantly, skin. Our sweaty, supple human skin is absolutely integral to our life-like veneer. I think living skin is the ultimate solution to give robots the look and touch of living creatures, since it is exactly the same material that covers animal bodies. Not only does this material resemble and feel like human skin, but the new studies team says that because it's made of real skin cells, it also can self-heal and is water repellent. Attached to a robot, this sort of skin sheet can therefore repair its own cuts and scrapes like normal human skin can. This is what it looked like before they grew the skin on it. To build humanoid robot skin, basically the team took a standard robotic finger, then submerged it in a cylinder filled with a special solution that fostered the right conditions to grow living skin. They've put out plenty of movies like Surrogates and all kind of other ones that show how you will pretty much lay in some kind of bed and your robot-looking human will go out into the day and do everything for you. That's why they are implementing the metaverse, and probably why they've made violence so bad right now. Because you don't have to leave your home to do what you need to do in the metaverse. So you don't have to be worried about getting hurt. Think about it.
Excuse me. Look, I understand that, they can see us through these right here. If we cover them up, so and so. We can see we also have one in the front. Probably gonna ask what happened to the phone. Yeah, it fell, cracked, and I decided to play Operation. Well, if you can tell back here, it does not have nothing. This is just for your speakers and for your, right here is for your mic. But what's interesting is I actually opened it up, and there's a fucking camera. A camera. You can't see it. But yet, right here, it gives it enough so it doesn't matter if you cover up the ones in the front and in the back. They're still watching.
Oh my gosh, y'all. Listen to this. This is so crazy. I'm telling y'all, they always put the truth in our face. Check this out. This is from the movie Evil on Paramount.
Have to have something to say?
Sometimes. And sometimes I ask him a question.
Can you ask him a question now?
Yes. Did you have a question?
Was Jeffrey Epstein a suicide?
Ben.
What?
No.
How was he killed?
With a pillow?
Why was he killed?
Because he could hurt several powerful men.
So which companies are using aborted fetuses in their food? So this is an article that goes in and talks. It says, so a biotechnology company out of California called Cinemix specializes in the development of food flavorings using aborted embryonic cells for the production of food chemicals. So research by Cinemix into the use of HEK293, aborted human fetal cells as a flavor enhancer, was published in a PubMed in 2002 after which several patents were filed by them. Additionally, the company has partnered with numerous major processed food manufacturers, including Kraft, PepsiCo, and Nestle. Now, what's interesting is that this woman in this article, Debbie Vinedge of the pro-life group Children of God for Life, makes a really important point here. And she says, what they don't tell the public is that they are using HEK 293, human embryonic kidney cells taken from an electively aborted baby to produce those receptors. They could have easily chosen animal, insect, or other morally obtained human cells expressing the G protein for taste receptors. So what you have here is them choosing to use these cells from aborted fetuses to develop their flavor enhancers.
I've been making a few videos recently talking about the elites theory that states that there's a very wealthy group of individuals running our world and making decisions about our world from the shadows. While many of you have messaged me expressing how you believe that it would be very tough to track down what the elites own and how they make their money, it's actually right in plain sight. And that's because almost every major company, from the food that we eat to our social medias that we use, can be traced back to being owned by only 22 companies. These corporations are mostly banks and insurance companies, and while it might not seem like that big of a deal at first, it actually gets strange when you realize that these corporations actually own each other as well. The smaller corporations and companies are owned by the bigger ones until you get all the way to the top where you have the biggest two, Vanguard and BlackRock. BlackRock alone has actually been nicknamed the fourth branch of government because of how much power and influence that they have over the United States. And this isn't some secret. They'll tell you flat out that BlackRock and Vanguard have $20 trillion between the two of them, and they could own almost everything by 2028. The only thing in their way is small family-owned and personal-owned businesses. And while they'll openly tell you that the CEO of BlackRock is Larry Fink, the biggest and most wealthy corporation, Vanguard, is privately owned, so the trail goes cold. But many speculate that the real owners are the 13 families or bloodlines, which many consider as the elites. Leave a like if you want me to go deeper on all this.
No.
1942, Sir Richard Owen of the British Museum's Natural History Department hypothesized about dinosaurs, calling them Dinosauria, 12 years before the first dinosaur fossils were ever even discovered.
The first fossil that was ever found was actually after they came up with the idea of a dinosaur.
Next thing that happened is that the foot was glued on, and I say foot rather than feet because this is a single foot. This is a slab and counter slab that were split and separated and glued in place to make it look as though there were right and left feet there. It's a clever use of materials. You know, if you're limited, you take a single foot and turn it into two, you know? Very, very creative.
Or resort to creating fraudulent fossils as evidence for evolution, then there must be no proof.
Now, TikTok, did you know this, that the entire Japanese government resigned? Completely resigned. Wow. Now, don't you wonder what's really going on in this world? Man, don't you wish that our government would just resign and all our problems would go away? God bless.
So we've already established that Nimrod is the beast, the Antichrist. We know that 666 is the number of the beast. Now, check this out.
When you start looking at the spinning heliocentric globe, 666 keeps popping up. Speed of Earth's orbit. If you look it up, it'll either tell you in kilometers or miles per second. When I looked it up, it was kilometers, converted it to miles, and saw that it was 18.5 miles per second. Well, you multiply that times 60 seconds to get minutes, 60 minutes to get an hour, it's 66,600 miles an hour. That's how fast the Earth is supposedly going around the sun. Curvature of the Earth, when you do the math to figure out how much the Earth is curving, 25,000 miles circumference ball, using the Pythagorean theorem, you end up with 8 inches per mile squared, which is the first mile is 8 inches. The curvature is 8 inches in 1 mile. 8 inches is 0.666 of a foot. 10 miles is 66.666 feet. 100 miles, 6,666.666 feet. Starting to see a pattern here. Earth's tilt, look it up, 23.4 degrees, 23.4 off of center. Well, 90 degrees, right? 90 subtract 23.4, 66.6. Is it just a coincidence that so many of the numbers related to our spinning heliocentric ball just so happen to be associated with the beast?
Growing up, we were all taught about our world, how it works, and the functions around it. Our world has 7 continents while spinning at about 1,000 miles per hour, while orbiting the sun at about 67,000 miles per hour, all while hurling through space at about 448,000 miles per hour. And while this is widely accepted today, many people are starting to believe that the world might be a little, if not completely different from what we were told. Mainly, there has been 3 different theories about the shape, location, and functionality of our world that has been blowing up recently. I'm about to go through them quickly. The first theory is bigger Earth theory. This theory states that our world is 3 times bigger than what they're telling us, with 3 times as many continents. This theory talks about how we're just on a small part of the world while the rest of the world is purposely being hidden from us. The next theory is hollow Earth theory. This theory states that instead of our world being full of rocks and lava, it's actually hollow and can be accessed through entrances at the North and South Pole and various tunnels around the world. The last and easily the most controversial theory is the flat Earth theory. This theory states that our world is semi-flat with a dome on top of it and the sun and the moon within this dome. Similar to the bigger Earth theory, this theory states that we're only given a very small chunk of the world, and even takes it a step further in saying that there are multiple different lands with different advancement levels and possibly even species that we've never heard of. And although these theories sound crazy, there's actually some interesting perspectives and evidences around them. Leave a like if you want me to break each of these theories down.
Did you know that you can literally fit the United States, China, India, Spain, France, Germany, and the UK all inside of Africa? Probably not, because the map that we're all used to seeing is the Mercator projection, which has a giant flaw of distorting the relative size of land masses due to the Earth's spherical nature. So in reality, Brazil is like the same size as the United States. The United Kingdom can fit inside of Michigan, and Greenland, big ass Greenland, is actually the size of Mexico. We can fit 2 Russias inside of Africa. But the maps don't make it seem that way, do they? So here's my question for you. Does it matter? Is there a psychological reason why the perception of the size of these countries and continents matters? Get in the comments and let me know your thoughts. I will meet you there.
Over active war zones right now, there is such an increased frequency of what they call UAP or UFO that they have these rules whether or not they fire upon them. And people got so mad at me for saying publicly on the news that we do fire at UFOs, because we fucking do. Specifically the area of the world that I'm talking about in the Middle East, anything within 27 to 30 miles of ground troops gets fired upon. That's it. I don't need to prove to anybody it's true. It is true. I speak with people that are there right now. It is true, and there's been such an increased frequency since 2021 that it has been pushed up to kind of like critical, where they're like, okay, these things are in our airspace, we could have collisions, but more importantly, like we see other countries firing on these. Russia, Syria, we know it's not their assets. So the question is, whose are these?
You know, it's funny you say this. I recently got tagged in this post where it talks about how pretty much a CERN type of machine is underneath the Hoover Dam. So in 1988, a type of particle detector called a time projection chamber was placed inside the dam as a part of an experiment. The dam is considered the 8th wonder of the world. And it says, remember how 8 is the number of time? I don't know anything about that. We're gonna have to find that out later. In a sense, the Hoover Dam literally splits time because it sits between 2 time zones. Not only that, but the first time the dam produced electricity was September 11th, 1935. Exactly 66 years before 9/11, which, as you'll see later in the book, may have been a massive ritual meant to manipulate our timeline. In Transformers, the Hoover Dam is used to store alien technology, and in Edge of Tomorrow, a dam is a hiding place of Omega, an alien that traps humanity in a time loop. And as you can see here, it says the Hoover Dam holds the key to the fate of the universe. Here, it explains what a time projection chamber is. In physics, a time projection chamber is a type of particle detector that uses a combination of electric fields and magnetic fields together with a sensitive volume of gas or liquid to perform a three-dimensional reconstruction of a particle trajectory or interaction. And here's some more information that like physics nerds will understand because I have no idea what this means. And then this is from an article written on October of 2014, Nevada's Secret Underwater World. When it was built in the 1930s, the Hoover Dam didn't just tame the Colorado River, it also created a massive lake that today hides shipwrecks, train wrecks, and cement tunnels alike. And of course, we can't forget about the two fallen angels that were sitting on black cubes at the Hoover Dam. But we're not surprised at all. They died to make the desert bloom is a clear and cut case of alchemy. Demonically sacrificed people to do some action or whatnot, the black cubes. Now, don't you find it interesting that the date was September 11th? Now, did you guys know that the first day of the year in the Ethiopian calendar is our September 11th? That's an interesting find. Now, you guys know that I told you that at the Hoover Dam Memorial, there is a marking on the floor showing that Thuban was the North Star for ancient Egyptians at the time of the Great Pyramids. And I showed you guys the map of what's at the Hoover Dam, and here we see the Thuban, which is the North Star of Egypt, Polaris, which is our North Star, and Vega, the North Star of the future. And I said that they wouldn't have added this unless there was a reason, like maybe they got rid of the Egyptians that were already here. Because there are rumors that there was a lost civilization in the Grand Canyon that was Egyptian. I know that the Hoover Dam isn't at the same place as the Grand Canyon. These are the 7 states that are sealed by the Colorado River. There's definitely something going on here. If you guys haven't watched my viral video where I talk about how the world ended in 2020, by the way, buy my merch available on alexhers.com. We talk about how the Ethiopian calendar 2012 equals to our 2020. And if this happened on September 11th, 9/11 happened on September 11th, then they're definitely doing ritual to keep us stuck in a loop.
Did you guys catch the Field of Dreams game last night? It was pretty badass, actually. They had a hologram of Harry Carey come out and sing, "Take me out to the ball game," like he always used to do. Hell, they even had 4D shots of him from behind him. Camera angles behind him. Super cool, super cool. How many times a week do you think they do this with old Joseph Biden? Every day? Is he even here anymore?
OJ's son was the one who actually did it. And OJ has been covering up for him the whole time. That it was his son who has a history.
Yeah, I saw his son got a
history of abuse, and like he was like a chef and worked with a lot of knives and stuff like that.
No, I ain't know that, bro.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, and the story is that the son did it, or whether OJ was involved in it, he knows that his son was the one who did it, and this whole time he's been covering up for him. Makes a little bit of sense, because if you think about what happened, it doesn't sound like a one-person job.
Now this is what the news not showing. This in the hood. Look at this shit. Look at this fucking water. You mean tell me they ain't sending that water? It was only just 2 hours of water. How the fuck is this water shooting up out the ground like this? Popping sewers up. It's on fire. I'm probably this shit popping sewers up. Like what is this?
What's above was below.
Family? I believe we once lived on the seafloor. A mud water event caused mankind to move above. I believe we are living on the clefts of mountains. Do you think pyramids were built on the clefts of mountains like we see on the seafloor? I'm saying this to show you this. Look at the rock structures in the forefront of the Sphinx. These appear to be crafted stones. These stones are also the surface, like the Sphinx is sitting on top. Is it possible the Sphinx sits on a stone structure? Check out this picture. This is a city on the roof of a building. It is said that this building is 50 stories tall. People built below and above. I came across this book while studying cathedrals, and the cover is interesting. It shows a sphinx on top of a stone structure. I was curious to why they made it faint. This immediately reminded me of this picture right here. The sphinx on a stone structure. You gotta analyze everything, family. Friend up.